Hello? What are these videos you guys linked? How Echo exploited to win WoW's biggest tournament. Alright, first of all, it's not WoW's biggest tournament. Oh, it's a Tettle's, I see. Yeah, Tettle's been doing this, like, WoW historian thing. It is WoW's biggest tourney. Is the Race World First a tournament? It, like, pretty much is. I guess, like, not... It's, like, semantics. Yeah, I know what the thing's gonna be about. It's gonna be about, It's gonna be about the Plague Boar thing, right? Thoughts on the new Nurko album? Ooh! Was not aware of it until this exact moment. When is this? Solstice. There's 100 songs on here. Could listen to it. I'll listen to it in order. Alright, it ain't working. Restart Spotify angle? Dude, I used to have the craziest Spotify bug on my old PC. It required me getting a new PC for the Spotify app to work. I had to use it on, like, a web client. It was very strange. I like Nurko's sound, though, so... I'm in. I'm so in. Alright, boys, the patch date has been announced. It's finally here. It's like so soon, dude. I can't believe the... When was the last race? March? So it really is. It's like 5 months now in between the Let Us Cook the Viewer Race World First comp. I'll give you like another week to think about it. Isn't this a giga short season? No, so since they've started the 18-month like World Soul Saga expansions, it's been pretty consistent. Actually, it's been since Dragonflight, I think, where like the average time in between seasons is like 5 months now, and it used to be like back in Shadowlands it was like 8 months. BFA it was like 7, 8 months. It's been 5 months for a while now. Basically, it's been 5 months ever since Shadowlands, the end of Shadowlands, because like they used to do 4 seasons in expansion, and now since it's been 3, they've been 5 months apart, except for Shadowlands. Shadowlands is like gig along. That was like COVID. Kind of makes sense. Oh, is it still? You said it's 3 weeks early. Just even still. Long time listener, second time caller. Where the fuck, dude? I don't even remember. I'm pretty sure Fuck Walmart started from after one of our polls. Shaq said, "Fuck this boss and fuck Walmart," and he just completely made it up, and then it just caught on from there. Max, my raid leader just said they are 90% certain benching Rogue. Please consolidate me. Consolidate you? Console you? Consolidate is fucking hilarious. Yeah, I'll consolidate you, man. I will say usually people I mean, they like kind of overrate that a little bit. Like, on most bosses, even if Rogue's damage is stinky, like, not Raced World first, like, you know, the bosses are much more killable when your guild is doing it. The Rogue buff is almost certainly worth it. Like, even if their damage is straight ass, which is what you're implying, right? A 4% DR is insane. And even on bosses where, like, the environment is doing a lot of the damage, a 4% reduction on everything else is still really good. This is going to be the Race World last with the most participants ever. Oh, like, okay, so when is the last day to get Cutting Edge? Is it the day before Heroic Week? Or, sorry, the day before Mythic comes out again? Or is it a week before that? It's a week before. Oh, really? Okay, sweet. Then I can actually look at it then. So what it was in the War Within was you still had the first week of like the new season, not the new season, but the new patch to like get Cutting Edge. So like the Raced World last was literally the day before Mythic Progress, and I couldn't stream it. But I can absolutely stream it if it's the day before the patch. My guild sure hopes we have the extra week. We were at 3.9%. I mean, you're chilling, right? 3.9% to a kill has to be pretty. I mean, I don't really know how Laura progress goes. I've been hearing that even though the boss has been nerfed to like a billion years, apparently it's still taken like a really long time. That's the word on the street. Midnight Falls. So let's separate this. I don't know. A lot of people knows you can even do this on progstats.io, but this is low key like an even better site than you think. So like here, let's just separate it just from kills starting in halfway through July. You can actually segment it to that, and it will scale every other graph based off of it. So like, do you want to see the pull counts of specifically like here, right? Like the first 2 weeks or whatever, you can start seeing it, or you can like just specifically look at the recent stuff. But yeah, bro, look at this. This is still like mostly a like 400 to 500 pull boss for most guilds, and then some guilds are doing it less than 400 and some are doing it more than 500 and 600. There's actually more doing it in plus 600 than less than 400. That's crazy. P1 Wipe Factory. Yeah, friendly reminder, by the way, if y'all are eating shit in P1, I just need you to know that there used to be 18 fucking glaives at the end of that phase. Like, hopefully you can watch the race next time and just realize what you're looking at is just, like, so different than anything you'd ever experience. That boss in particular, like, bro, P1 was actually insane. Can confirm guild just finished on Wednesday. 490 pulls. Watch Liquids kill after, and it's not even the same fight. It might be due for a rewatch. I haven't rewatched that kill in a long time. A Star Splinter comes out in P2 and it's like they throw the crystals into it to save themselves. I don't know. P3 would be a lot more consistent if guilds see it more, but I feel like there's a lot to get into P3 immediately. Bro, a little WoW history lesson. We talked about this on the podcast recently, but I want to show you guys a boss. Some people in this channel who are extremely old will remember this. Fallen Avatar World first. All right. So this boss was really hard. In fact, for a very long time, this was considered the hardest non-end boss ever. And I think arguably you could still argue that it is. It wouldn't be a good argument, but it is an argument you could make. But regardless, this was like, for a long time, this was like one of the hardest bosses in this game, right? And the boss consisted of two phases, right? In this phase, basically you're fighting this Maiden of Valor and you're cleaving down the boss. And more importantly is these beams right here. You see these beams right here? These are going into the boss, and you have to stop it with the Maiden. It was like a really cool tank mechanic. And as soon as the boss hit full energy, he was going to phase. And then he did this other hard phase that was like you go down to the bottom and you're in this space and you're hitting them and you have to like blow up these certain platforms and do these soaks. But then as the fight goes on and on, he desolates and he destroys part of the platform, and then you have little space left. You bring him to the edge, you blow up this, you blow up this, you leave one platform at the end, and then you're literally burning him on this, right? That's it. This phase was so fucking hard. Think of this as like the end of Laura, right? Like super fucking crazy hard at the time. All right, so what was really fucking sick about this boss is if you felt like you were good at P1 and you were like, man, it's just like so inconsistent to get into P2 and you're learning it so infrequently, what you can do for an hour or 2 hours is you could pull the boss like this, not pull the Maiden into this beam right here, and this beam would charge the boss's energy to full in like less than 10 seconds, and you would instantly phase. You would have no chance of killing the boss. The boss, instead of being at 28% when it fell down here, it would be at 100, and you would for sure not kill it. But what you could do is you could just practice just the last phase for like as long as you wanted to, until you felt like you were confident in this phase, to then now when you go back to P1, you feel like any pull to the last phase could be a kill. It was like certainly the only example of this in WoW's history on an extremely hard boss, but one of the only examples in general where the game gave you an option to like basically progress different parts of the fight at a different time. So like for you guys who fought Laura, imagine if the fight let you just practice P4 only for 30 minutes or an hour. Or you could just pull the start of P3 right away, and you could just isolate that for an hour, whatever. Dude, wouldn't the boss be so much fucking easier if you ever got to the point where you felt like those phases, you just got consistent? Because like here's why this is OP. If you see P3 Lura 5 times in 4 hours versus P3 Lura 5 times in a row, how much better you will be at P3 is like indescribable. If you get it 5 pulls in a row, you retain all the information, it becomes normal. When you see it 5 times in 4 hours, every time you get there, you spend part of it remembering what you should do, and it's not like set in stone. But when you do it consistently, it just becomes baked into your brain, right? So like just being able to do stuff like this is just so fucking insane. To be fair, the add-on X Practice makes P4 easy as fuck. I've always found X Practice to be not entirely transferable. Like, we even used to work with the X Practice guy and have, like, you know, I think the most insane thing we did with that was before Kel'Thuzad came out. We had him fully recreate a Kel'Thuzad, like, intermission phase thing for people who were going down to practice, like, dodging tornadoes and stuff, based on what we saw in Mythic testing. And it, I don't know, you could argue maybe it helped, but I don't know. You should, dude, when we played Final Fantasy, we were doing this ultimate called, was it T? The Epic Alexander. And there's like a really interesting like mechanic solve at some point in that fight. And there was like a little, basically like an X Practice like tool where you could just like practice all 8 versions of it. And it made it way easier, bro. Like, it was so sick to just be able to... I think, like, in Final Fantasy in particular, stuff like X Practice is actually so insane because that that game's difficulty is very much put in like doing a very specific movement based on a specific debuff you get, and then you just have to memorize what all of them are. This game doesn't really do that a lot. Lura is just so annoying because P1 and P2 are just so hard for casual players. Yeah, but like that's the thing. I think like I can't say I don't think Blizzard like didn't nerf the boss enough. Like I think you could I think I think in some bosses like this you could criticize Blizzard and be like they didn't do enough. And if you were to look at pull counts in particular, I think you could argue that Blizzard still didn't do enough. But like I want to say Lura might be like the most or maybe the second most nerfed boss in history behind Jailer. And it still just doesn't matter. It's just like the fundamental glaive mechanic is just still it's just every pull it's different, you know. It's and maybe that's it. But I think P2 should be studied because I think it's the largest gap by far between Hall of Fame and late cutting edge guilds. Wait, really? I don't think we've wiped once in P2 since our prog kill. Dude, if we got through P1 in progression, within like a very short amount of time, it was a P3 pull. Actually, if we got through the intermission's kind of hard. But like P2, Lura was just like a free phase. It was something we thought. Are you saying that's something that's like actually wipes guilds a lot now? But a lot of late cutting edge guilds struggle at it. Maybe because it's a healing thing. I feel like that phase always kind of did a lot of damage. So like maybe it's just like, I mean, healing's a really hard role, and I feel like as you go down the guild rankings, you're having less and less HPS in your guild, and that's like a compounding effect, right? Because not only are you dying, but also like if your raid is always scared that they're gonna die, they're also gonna make more mistakes. That's how that works. So it's like exponentially worse when you have low HPS. It's seed droppers and soaks. Yeah. Max, now that season one is almost over, do you think that the add-on removal was a success or not? Well, all we've dealt with in season one was just like the beginning, and I feel like that wasn't a success because obviously like there was like the Laura add-on and there was like the interrupt stuff and there was like the constant like mid-patch breaking of things with no time for these add-on developers to test. Like that was a huge problem. I don't think we can determine it a success or a failure. And even then, I don't think it'll ever be as binary as one of those two things. It's kind of it's fluid, you know. But I think we won't know until the start of season 2, right? I think we'll need to kind of every time a new season comes out, the people who are really smart at this stuff are going to be pushing to see whatever they can possibly do, and then Blizzard's going to fight against that. That hasn't happened for 5 months, so you know. So we'll see. I can already tell you that what was a lot of stuff that was possible in season 1 is not possible in season 2. So they've definitely done more of it. And do I think it's a win? I think now that Ellesmere UI exists, and I think people have like started making. I always think it was like so much worse at the start of this because like more than anything else, it wasn't even about what they removed. It was about everyone that even had a competent UI or add-on had to just make it a new way. And then because of that, add-ons were much lower quality. That's way less of the case now. I think just a lot of stuff is pretty good. So I think that ended up being okay. And I think if possible, if you create raid mechanics at least that don't need add-ons to solve them, which has always been a huge issue, and then you appropriately create the mechanics to accommodate that. I think there's been some examples where like they still, and we knew there were going to be growing pains there, but like where they still made stuff that, you know, would probably be pretty bullshit without some kind of tool, you know? Like Lura memory games, kind of a good example of that. Like, bro, you guys who are doing this right now, I mean, forget, like you're doing this right now. You're on Lura. And imagine you had to natty calm the memory game or type it in chat or something, whatever. There's plenty of ways to do it. But like imagine you don't have the thing on your screen showing you where it is. And you have the glaives you have. All right, now imagine there's 18 glaives and they're twice as fast. Like, ain't no fucking way, dude. Like, there's just no shot. It would have been insane, man. So, something on that would have had to be toned down, I think. But certainly would have been possible. Just way harder. You could just macro rate message trying. Yeah, I know. We came up with all of the ways you know how to do it now. We just chose the best one. I could have done it with no mistakes ever. Light work. All right, fuck, you're a beast, bro. Max, are you planning to remake the Making the Best Raid video you made a few years ago? Would be interesting to see what new bosses make it. Hold on. I mean, I don't know if I'll make a whole new video about that, but I would actually like to, maximum best raid. Making the best raids of all time? Is this it? Making the best WoW raid of all time. 3 years ago, 2 years ago. No, that was like the thing. I think it was this. This was 3 years ago. Holy moly. All right, so let me find the... All right, so what? Ursoc's the first boss, into Throne of Thunder Council, into Opulence, into a choice between Ashvane and Thogar, into Painsmith, into a choice of Sludge Fist and Siegecrafter Blackfuse, into Halandra, second to last boss, into... Is that Fallen Avatar? I think it is. And then, like, we were choosing a last boss, and I chose Lei Shen. Would anything have been added? So, like, what bosses have happened since this? This was on November 16th, 2022. Laura? Do you guys really think Laura's, like, the best boss of all time? Like, I'm gonna... This is gonna be maybe controversial, but I think Laura is, like, hard carried by the secret phase actually being, like, a surprise, and, like, it was Easter, and, like, the way the race turned out. I think, like, that, like, heavily makes Laura seem better than it actually is. Like, I think if you're a race viewer, I could see that opinion, but even, like, race people, I don't even think would say that. Yeah, maybe Dimensius, actually. So basically, everything... This was Dragonflight? What expansion were we in? WoW in November 16, 2022. Expansion release timeline was in the Shadowlands expansion. The next expansion, Dragonflight, has not launched yet and was released a little later. So this was right before Dragonflight. I mean, you're basically just asking, like, what are the... Here, let me log in WoW. I need to, like, look at the dungeon journal. Oh, my BattleNet is offline? Okay. Any RNG-based wiping is horrible. Halandris and Tindril are the best bosses because they're very deterministic yet hard. All right, I'm gonna call cap on that. Okay, it depended on when you killed Tindril, but bro, the RNG of seeds was absolutely demonic, bro. Like, you'd wipe on some pulls to seeds because just, like, fucking 100 of them spawned on one side and none on the other side, and you have literally no way to prepare for that because you just have to spread out your players because it's so fast. That is fake news as fuck. Wait, are you joking? Wait, what was the other boss you said? Yeah, Halandris was deterministic, though. Like, extremely. Make Sludge Fist the end boss with 6 pillars and ads and secret phase. Dude, imagine having so much aura that you're Sludge Fist and like people still say you're the best boss ever when like you had damage amp timings that were just like dog shit for some classes and they were amazing for other classes. And I feel like a boss like that now, like people are just gonna get super mad at it. But like Sludge Fist, it had so much aura that it didn't matter. All right. Oh yeah, we can just disable add-ons. All good. Yeah. So what bosses since Dragonflight are like contenders to be in the theoretical best raid of all time? Max, are you familiar with the WAR statistic in baseball? Yes. How many positions could a race rolled first guild fill with replacement level cutting edge raiders before it might risk losing to a non-race rolled first guild? Oh, a non-race rolled first guild? I don't know because there's just so much time. But this is how I put it before. Like, I know people had made the argument that like, you know, like, oh, I could maybe be in a race rolled first guild or whatever. And the way I look at it is it's like, oh, well, could you have killed Laura with a bunch of like random people that said they could do that? Obviously, the answer is no, but on a more extreme level, I think if you were to replace one of our raiders with just some random person who's just like, bro, I could do the race if I had time for it, whatever. I think if our guild had one of those, I don't think that boss would have been killable in that reset. Like we would have not been able to. Like every single person had such an insane responsibility that you would just get absolutely fucked if you were even missing one single player. And like replacing them with someone that was, you know, not nearly as good, which is, you know, pretty high level. Okay. Midnight. Oh, that's not what this is. Not current season. It would be March of Gildanos. Okay, so let's start with Dragonflight. So are there any Dragonflight bosses that are potentially like would join the best raids of all time or the best raid of all time? So Tindril and Fyrak, I think, totally depend on when you pulled it. I think Tindril definitely loses some points because it like wasn't even in a complete fight. They basically saw how hard they made seeds, and because we already progressed seeds, they couldn't like change anything else in the fight because it was just so hard. And then they just like nerfed it in P3 a little bit. But because of that, you don't even get near the enrage in P3. You kill it like halfway through P3. And you don't even see most of the mechanic lineups, which I thought was like definitely minus points. Like, for example, if you look at Sludge Fist, you kill Sludge Fist as it hits the wall at the end of the fight, you know? Like, that's like super final. Tindril never did that. It was just like trying to do as many seeds as you could, and then you just like kind of eventually killed it. So I don't know if I'd put Tindril there, honestly. Fyrak. So, like, obviously the biggest issue with Fyrak is I think, like, P2 is kind of whatever. It's like a whatever phase. And then also the P1 intermission is, like, really stained by private aura nonsense. However, Fyrak is iconic as fuck, though, because, like, they introduced multiple mechanics in this that have now become, like, staples in WoW, you know? I guess they didn't really introduce seeds. Like, Halandra's bombs were Halandra's bombs before seeds were, but they did bring Blaze, and boy, do they fucking love a Blaze. They love a Blaze now. They just put this everywhere. I don't know if I'd put Fyrak there. It'd be maybe a contender. Aberrus? Dude, low-key, maybe Rashok early. Or if you want to get real creative, maybe a, like, super hard, like, Rashok's later in the raid, and they make like a harder version of Rashok, like a sludge-fisted Rashok. I feel like that's a good one. Also, yeah, I feel like Amalgamation's like a good early boss too. Vault of the Incarnate's just nothing in here, right? There's not a single boss in here. I think if you're going to do this on heroic difficulty, I think Razageth is arguably the best heroic boss of all time. I think Razageth is right up there with, like, Denathrius and a few others. But, like, on Mythic, it's just a total pile of garbage. Okay, that's it for Dragonflight. War Within. Nerebar. I think for a lot of people, Nexus Princess Kaiveza would be up there. Never for me, though, because of the one tank stuff. Ansurek. Ansurek's real good. Ansurek was really good. Ansurek could maybe be on there. Liberation of Undermine. Sprockemonger owns. I don't think anything here quite makes it. Thought One Arm Bandit was also really cool. Richard Reverb? No, bro. No, that was not. Talk about RNG. Dude, we pulled this back-to-back 2 times on a mostly single-target boss with very simple ad cleave. And on one pull, we were 6% ahead of the other pull, and nothing changed. The only difference was the ads happened to spawn stacked up. So we just killed it infinitely faster. Cauldron as a second boss for the aura. Yeah, it does have crazy aura. And then Manaforge Omega. Oh, man. I feel like Nexus King had potential. The only problem is this is one of those fights where only one guild gets to have fun. Like, when you're at the end of Nexus King and it's just, like, so simple and you just stand in these spots and the orbs rotate and it just kind of solves itself, that's because someone had to make the strat for that to work, which involved a lot of time and math, literally math, and, you know, we created, like, a tool where you could simulate the phase and stuff like that, and we spent a lot of time coming up with the best version of that. That's what we used, and then that's what everyone else used, and then that solved it. So this is unfortunately one of those bosses where so much of the cool parts of the progression are the really hard figuring out thing, where just by design, whenever you do bosses like that with a video, they're just not nearly as cool. Lihivum's another great example of that, where it was like really fun to kill, but like not fun to like re-kill or kill with a video. I think the answer is probably Dimensius. Dimensius is pretty sick. Also, I think, like, the first example of dragon riding really working effectively in raiding. Like, in Tindril, it was, like, fine. But I think on this boss, Dimensius is not the same boss without dragon riding. It's the... You have to dragon ride for the sense of scale to make sense on Dimensius. And I think when people think of Dimensius in their head, even people who killed it and not just watched it, their mind is immediately going to come to the, you're on your dragon... and you're riding through the meteors, and the boss is blasting you with a beam. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the boss is just fucking enormous. And the only way you can pull that off is to have dragon riding purely for the sense of scale of everything else around you. So I think Dimensius will probably make the list. And then what we have this raid, current raid. Anything from the Void Spire? Definitely not. And then Dream Rift, definitely not. Then it's just March of Kel'Danas. I feel like Bellerin was kind of interesting. I'm not sure. Do you know what's funny? Someone the other day asked me IRL, like, what... They were, like, talking about WoW raids that they followed, and they were talking about, like, Siren Athos, and they're like, oh, yeah, what was the most recent raid? And I literally sat there and was like... What was the name of this raid? And then it dawned on me, it was like, oh yeah, there was like 3 of them. There really isn't a defining name of this raid. You just call it like the first raid of midnight because like there's just, will you call it March of Kel'Danas? Like that's not technically true. You don't say, like it's weird. Season 1, yeah, they weren't a WoW player. They were someone who... It was my girlfriend's sister who has played a lot of Destiny too, so like they're very familiar with what raiding is in video games. And they were just asking me for, they don't play WoW, so they were like, what was the name of the raid? And I was like, I felt like such an idiot. I was like, like actually couldn't, like, I don't know. I actually don't know what the name of the raid is. Max, would you be down for a dragon riding only encounter? I can't see a scenario where that isn't terrible, so probably not. Did we get good RNG on our kill? Let's see. Liquid Lura. Like, near the end of progression, we got so good at this fight that even when we didn't get good glaive RNG, we still, like, made it through P1. And if you were watching at the time, you would remember me be like, holy shit, you guys are insane. Because, like, I would just be so positive we were not going to kill it. Now, let's just look at the end. So this is with... Do we have 18 glaives out yet? I think this is right before it. Oh, no, it is right. Yeah, no, we do. We have 18 glaives in the room right now. But just most of them are over there. "18 glaives look stupid." Well, the thing is you never... let's not say never. You rarely had all 18 of them on the same side of the room as you. But sometimes you did. Sometimes. Dude, that's what I want to see. No one will have ever saved this, but I want to see a super cut of the wipes we had when we died, even in the heat of losing the race, and we were just laughing at how insane the RNG was. Just being like, what the fuck was that? I want to see a fucking super cut of glaive wipes near the end of this phase. Oh, yeah. So you had to drop the crystals here. That's one thing that is fascinating to me, is that P1 is still hard farming guilds, and you don't even have to drop the crystals anymore like this. And that was like the vast majority of P1 wipes was this interaction. So in P2, you guys said P2 is wiping people a lot. Is it the soaks? Oh, I could kind of see it because like if any of the crystal people mess up, even just having like 2 soaks in the room can really fuck things up, especially right here. If someone doesn't drop correctly here and there's soaks as you're getting sucked in and they're like on the outside of the room, that's going to like fuck you crazy. That's going to like kill you. And then maybe exact spreads, yeah. Because, like, a soak happening here, like, low-key does not matter. Like, you don't even need to redrop them, honestly. Like, you could easily do a soak right here. There's nothing happening. Intermission farmed you a lot? Yeah, the intermission's hard to get a good spread to where you're actually healing everyone. Like, I don't know if people have figured out a better strat, but my strat for it was, like, you just had you basically just created a spread around the boss where... There we go. Oh, wow, they updated this. That's cool. So, like, if you just picture the seed people, you just do a spread. You're usually ending the room around over here-ish. And you just basically are putting it to where no seeds can cleave each other. Usually a little tighter than this. So basically the line that would come out of your star splinter, if it spawned on this person, right? If this person got a star splinter coming out of them. Oh, fuck. Bro, I'm not even used to this. Hold on. Where's my trusty arrow? Oh, no. Well, either way. Oh, the top? Oh, yeah, facts. You're right. Yeah. Ooh, that's even way better. That's sick. Okay, I'll have to get used to this, though. So let's say this guy has a Star Splinter. You don't want his Star Splinter to be able to reach this person. Like, this would be a bad spot, because then, like, seed people have way... You want to make the fight easiest on the people who have the hardest job, so these people. And then after that, you need to just make sure that your healers are spread out enough to where they can hit everyone. So usually it's like 2 pretty strong HPS healers in the middle, and then you have like 1 to the right and 1 to the left to spot heal people that are on the edge. And then what I did is like put super tanky people that could never die like so far away. Tanks are on the opposite side. Fuck them. People that can't die, you're here. We even had Impec was like here, and I think like Lip was here. Ret Paladin. So, like, Ret Paladin's far away. He can't die, but also, anytime Impec... we basically had a traffic jam of, like, 1 too many ranged around this area. So we were like, fuck it, we'll put Impec over here. And Impec's like, I'm gonna die. And Lip was like, I can keep him alive. So our Ret Paladin just kept him alive. Like, basically by using Sack, Lay on Hands, and every now and then, like, a spare, like, Flash of Light or a Wog, he would just, like, keep him alive during the intermission. Basically. And that allowed us to, like, super spread, so there's way less... Basically, you want to just, like, remove the amount of people in total that ever have to think about someone else's Star Splinter. And that's what worked for us, but, like, you could come up with a bunch of different things. But what you don't want is, like, a bunch of people in range of each other. Like, usually listen to your players, or, obviously, if you're in the raid yourself, like, anytime you feel like there's, like, 3 people dodging each other, like, someone needs to go somewhere else. That's too hard. The overlaps of Splinter on Crystal Holder into Beam is on them is what was wiping us most in this phase. Yeah, at that point you just got a game, though. Or you could do the Scripe call. I'm literally not even making this up. Listen to how Scripe does this phase. Bro, I would actually blow my brains out if they wanted me to do this. Does it play the comms? No. Where are the comms? What the fuck is this music? Oh, no, we can hear.
Spawning. Bouncing.
Intermission. Where is it? Here we go.
Okay.
Listen to this shit, bro.
Keep watching.
And...
Burst beam spawning now.
Darkness,
2, 1. Shooting. New spawn. 2, 1. Shooting.
New spawn, 2, 1, shooting.
New spawn.
New spawn. He hits new spawn, 2, 1, shooting for 30 plus seconds. My actual goat. Holy fuck.
2, 1. Shooting. New spawn.
Almost bad as drop, pickup in P2. Yeah, you could basically have put my voice on like a... You could basically have recorded it and just played it in P2. There's no scenario where I would ever change my call. It's just what it is. It's possible that I feel like that would not help me at all. It totally depends. It's actually kind of fascinating. So if you do what Scripe did there and you do the 3, 2, 1 shooting... People could get used to it, and then you can never stop calling it because people will tell you, like, hey, I'm, like, using that for me. Like, that's helping me. If you don't do that, then people will find another way to deal with it. And usually, I mean, they literally had a weak aura on their screen. It's not literally a weak aura, but, like, it says beam spawning, and then it showed the beams shooting, like, when they were going to go off. But, like, that doesn't matter. Like, once someone on a really, really hard boss where you're trying to use anything you can to, like, free up Coggy load... As soon as you latch on to something that is like you are using it to help you, you're not going to use another way to deal with it. Which is why a very common wipe in this game is a raid leader calls the same thing every pull, and then they don't call it, and then people die to it. It's absolutely the raid leader's fault, because if on a hard enough boss, you need all the help you can get, and if people are using that call, yes, could they track it on their own or with other things? Yes, but they haven't been asked to so far, and they have become very reliant on it. If you just take that away with no notice, like, they're going to fuck it up because they were using that exclusively as their, like, reminders. So, I've been in a few guilds where, like, a raid leader will not call something, and then, like, people obviously die to it because they normally call it, and then they'll be like, you guys should know by now. And it's like, dude, you just totally don't get it, but that's fine. Max, did you see the AI slop meta for season 2? No, what is this? You timestamped it for me. This is a Zorthus video called AI slop tier lists are getting out of hand.
These 2 runs generated. You can tell by the way all this tier list for season 2. Now, if you look at it, you can see that it is obviously AI generated. You can tell by the way the background looks, the text sizes are pretty inconsistent, and then there is the fact that it used the logo from the wrong expansion. But this tweet concerningly performed pretty well. It has 74k views and...
Yeah, the reason why it has a lot of views is because people see tier list and they're just like, fucking, yes, dude. They're like, I finally know what's gonna be BIS, and they're not looking at all the fine details.
So it's definitely gotten out there, and there are probably people looking at this who don't know what's wrong with it and are probably actually going to follow it. Now this tier list is trash. It's not because it's AI, but it's because the dataset and criteria used is complete.
Yeah, you could say he's like, oh, well, you can tell this is AI generated because it uses all this information, but you could also give it the correct information and just ask AI, I guess, to create a cool infographic or something, right? And then it would be fine, right? But obviously it looks like it was just...
misleading. In the S tier, it has given us Shadow Priest and Ret Paladin, which are looking decent, but they are definitely not looking S right now, and no other tier list maker is putting those specs on S. The data used in this tier list comes from Archon.gg, which is a site that auto-generates tier lists and other things based on Warcraft logs data. This is their page for PTR rankings, and at the top of the page, they have a big disclaimer that says, treating testing data like live data is both incorrect and inaccurate. So to make the AI tier list, this guy went into the DPS rankings table down here and he sorted by key level. As you can see, the 4 specs that have timed to 21 are the specs that he has in S tier. Now you might think that doing the highest key means that a spec is good. That would make logical sense, right? But that is not really how the PTR works. On the PTR, there is a vendor that sells scrolls that let you choose your key level. These scrolls will let you choose any key level between 2 and 20, but you can't do a 21. The only way to get a 21 is to time a 20, and then you have 1 attempt at it, like it's a live non-resil key. So nobody is really doing 21s on PTR. Vast majority of top groups are just doing 19s and 20s. Even the highest end players like Kira are just doing 19s all day on stream. But there are a few Chinese groups on PTR that have been trying 21s, and 2 of them have been timed in total. This 21 Ruby life pools is where the Shadow Priest S tier allegation comes from. The key is from 11 days ago. Mistweaver was very OP back then, but it has since been nerfed by a lot. Prot Paladin was very OP back then, but it has since been nerfed by a lot. The timer is no longer valid because they reduced the timer in this dungeon from 29 to 28 minutes a week ago. And the S...
Yeah, this is cool. Why am I watching this, though? Like, is there a reason you wanted me to watch this? Like, you could have just said... there are AI slop tier lists and you shouldn't follow them. But like, yeah, you know, like facts, true. I don't think this is like polarizing or like it's just like okay, I get it. I agree even. React to Tomato Man's room. Nah, I don't care. What is this? How Blizzard GM powers actually work in WoW. 2 days ago.
So this Blizzard Game Master was caught helping players cheat in-game, but how did it look from his perspective? Like, how do the GM abilities look and how do they work? That's the angle we're going to get into here today because there's tons of videos out there explaining every detail of what happened by people with much more personality than yours truly, but the quick version is this.
All right, so break it down, man. What's going on?
All right, so the reason that it blew up is because there's some other stuff going on with the GM.
I don't need like the recap.
It wasn't in the guild. And unbeknownst to them, they were logging the fight, and the logs showed the GM and the GM ability, and the whole thing was posted on Reddit, and of course then it blew up. So long story short, the GM was fired from Blizzard, and as you can read there, the plan is to, at the very least, remove whatever gains the players got for completing this dungeon, and likely more.
By the way, what did they actually end up doing here? I know they banned, they said they were going to ban the players, but they were probably still investigating it. The last time I looked, they fired the guy, which was obviously going to happen, but like no actual 1 month bans. And I think That's around what I guessed. Like, obviously, like, anytime there's stuff like this, there's like a mob that's like, fucking permaban them and kill them, bro. Like, fuck them. They should never play WoW again. And I can empathize with some of that. I get it. But that's just like, you have to look at how they've punished things in the past, and they have like created a standard that they have to use in the future to like argue other bans on. And like, if you look at what those players did, even though it is kind of unprecedented, like you could argue they utilized a Blizzard employee to like do some things where you could relate to like, oh, they used an exploit to do a dungeon, or they used an item that like one-shots the boss or whatever. It's like the same end result. It's like how nefarious is the action. But if you're Blizzard, you know, it's embarrassing to you because one of your own employees chose to do this, and that person's going to get the vast majority of the blame. Like, if they could have done the whole, like, if they could have done something worse than firing that guy, they would have, because like it's just a terrible look for them, and you're the person with responsibility that shouldn't do that stuff. So I always felt like the most these players were going to get was 6 months, and then even then I guessed 1 to 2, and then ended up being around right. And dude, when I said that, like, I feel like, dude, people in chat were so mad at me too. It was so funny. There was a couple of just like ban Andys that were just out for blood, and they were like, dude, you are fucking lost if you think these guys deserve anything less than a permaban. I'm like, bro, I don't care what happens to these people. I'm just telling you what Blizzard, I think, is going to do. But they were so mad. They were like, and you could tell that they were like a little uninformed, because I think a lot of them thought they were doing this on like world first level keys, and they don't know that they did this. Maybe, and this doesn't matter to you as well, like where they were doing this to like, they basically did this to save 30 minutes of time, which makes it honestly even more stupid that they did it. But you could tell a lot of the casuals that just heard about this, and they don't, like, it escaped containment a little bit from the high-end Mythic Plus scene. And people were like, yeah, this is what I bet, dude, I can't wait till the news comes out when all the top players have been abusing a WoW GM and stuff like that. And those were absolutely the people that were like bloodthirsty for permabans. And so it was coming from a place of being misinformed, I think. What deserves a permaban? My opinion on what deserves a permaban isn't relevant, but like what Blizzard decides as a permaban is like anything related to RMT, if they catch you, anything related to like gold selling, which is also RMT, account sharing is usually a permaban. Oh, that's not even true though, because like Hopeful got 6 months, which is basically a permaban, because he just made a new account and has never gone back to the old one. So yeah, I guess it's just money, anything involving money. Maybe if I bet like they permabanned like the like people who do the like fake Rex Troy thing at the beginning of every patch, and they like do some crazy shenanigans and like one shot the end boss. Max, RMT still happens, though. Yeah, I'm sure it does. Basically, RMT is going to happen around any gold selling community. Are you saying whoever gets buyers for Liquid doesn't take money and crypto? No, we do all of our stuff in-house, and it's all gold. We are under an insane microscope, and if we did any of that shit, we would get shot into the sun, and we'd be potentially, like, putting at risk, you know, very lucrative deals with orgs that we are required for us to like raid in the race, and we can't jeopardize that for any reason. So the risk isn't worth the reward. But goddamn, I miss when we could still RMT and get away with it. Those were the fucking days, bro. Oh man, that was amazing. But yeah, we have not been able to do that for a long time. It was fucking legit. Max, I think similar to the situation, a player got permabanned back in vanilla for using a GM debug to instantly kill bosses. Well, that's... Okay, so there's multiple things about that. Number one, things have changed a lot since vanilla, and what they permaban you for might have changed in literally 20 plus years. But also... that is a person using a GM debug item, not a GM doing something. You know what I'm saying? Like, because the GM did it, and because it's probably not super clear what I think there's also some other information is like the GM certainly before leaving Blizzard was probably like or getting fired was like told Blizzard to his best account like how involved the other people were, maybe to get some kind of I don't know severance. Probably unlikely if he worked there for that little, but there was very little information online. I think it's probably really hard to tell how exactly how involved those other players were. Also, I believe those 1 month bans were enough to were they enough to make those people late to the next season? Like they won't be able to start the next season on time? They're going to be 2 days late to the actual season. Yeah, that's where I could see the GM where the bans could have been more severe cuz even 2 months. Bro, those players being 1 month late to the season is basically the same as a permaban to them. All people who are doing 23s right now, 24s, whatever, like those people are... You have those people show up to a season 1 month late, you might as well permaban them. They're going to make a new account.
Sort of disciplinary action or
Yeah, show us the GM abilities.
or do anything that could be seen as harmful to them, and that's why I don't cover private servers or post how-to guides on exploring.
How is this guy online right now as GM Dajosai?
Stuff. This is
Or did he somehow animate this picture the guy sent?
Offline, educational only, and it's not hosted for anyone else to play. But a GM account looks like this. And as you can see, there are lots of special abilities, but of course, at the center of this...
Oh, local sandbox server. Okay.
It says Area Death Test, and it's very simple. It puts a circle on the ground, and any mob inside that circle is instantly dead. And it's not like they take a certain amount of damage or anything. Their state is just turned to dead. And of course, they are lootable. And this works on any number of mobs. As long as they are inside that circle. You can see it has massive range. And so, of course, all Daijosai had to do was put the mob in the Mythic Plus dungeon inside that circle and click, and the entire raid had beaten their encounter. And as the tooltip said, they had cheated. But okay, what else can they do? Well, almost anything. GM accounts have two special menus of GM spells. First is the death spell we've been talking about. There's a spell to root or freeze any pathing mob. You have Banish, 100-yard range Frostbolt, int or melee buffs for any character. You can shackle any mob, not just undead. This is Test Grow and Test Shrink, and these are actually really funny. We can go and find something. There's a cow, and spam Grow, and up it goes, and there you go. Utter swing in the wind. And
bro, cows are underrated cute as fuck, by the way. I don't know if any of you guys have ever like seen any cow, even a dairy cow, which are like massive, massive cows. I mean, they're just like very cute animals.
And then you can shrink it down. And why not go make a giant chicken? So anyway, here's the second larger menu. You can bind your character to any local zone or graveyard. There's a warrior charge. Charm lets you play as any mob or NPC, kind of like Hunter Eyes of the Beast. So here is Kira here. And now we're playing as Kira. She has no abilities, but if she did, if this was like a boss mob or something, we would have their abilities in our action bar.
Oh, that's sick. Dude, I would want to control like a raid boss and just see their abilities on my bar in a way, you know.
Test takes over anything and makes it like your hunter pet. So we can grab Marshall Dugan here. You can damage, reflect, disarm. Divine
I'm spamming
Shield
Glaive,
is the
bro.
Pally spell, but with unlimited duration. Freeze is for players. Invis makes the GM fully invisible. There's knockback. Light test makes the game crazy bright, but I won't show it because I can't figure out how to undo it once it's done. This makes every one of your spells instant. This is a dot. Can add drunk effect, sprint.
All right, I'm losing interest.
Stun.
Anything else cool?
You can summon grouped players to you. Got a super jump,
All right, what
unlimited
else?
super. Hundreds of console commands that GMs can do in-game. They can modify their or any player's health, level,
They can probably ban
HP,
people, right?
mana, any stat. you can teleport absolutely anywhere you want. You know, I make exploration videos and I'll move the character with the command go XYZ, which lets you pick a map and chords. And so here is the WoW export program, which has this map list that I use often. And I can see here map 1 is Kalimdor. And on the right down there, you can see we're in the Barrens, and there's the chords of our pointer, -836, -1937. And so we can do times GMs.
Yeah. Okay.
And so
All right, cool. That's fine. I get it. The novelty of this wore off, but if I find it interesting, okay. Same with this. This is probably how the dude TP'd into the dungeon. I think he was there the whole time, just watching his friends, seeing as he was also actively in Discord with them. Oh, hi, Lily. Hello. Max, what do you think will happen after the next expansion? I don't know. That's like really interesting though, because technically some of these things that we have available to us right now are not evergreen. They are like specifically for the World Soul Saga. Now, if any of them were like sick, they might keep them, but like I think something like the talent tree is evergreen. Not to say they won't ever redo it again. Maybe they will. They did in MoP. They did here. But like specifically the like hero talents are exclusive, and the Apex talents were like kind of exclusive to the World Soul Saga. So I'd be interested to see like if they like reset a lot of stuff basically. But I kind of doubt it. I initially thought they were going to do a lot more like borrowed power stuff because you have a set endpoint where you can end it. But because they're not doing that, I feel like they're actually just going to keep a lot of it. I don't know. One thing is I wonder if they're going to keep this same release cadence. Part of me thinks the salespeople, whenever they make a lot of money when they sell expansions, because not only do they sell expansions, but they get people to temporarily resubscribe to the game, and subscriptions are all their money. So, like, if they've now gotten into a, for better or worse, are releasing expansions every 18 months, and we've already talked about how if they're trying to create the same amount of content in 18 months as they used to do in 24, and they're not hiring a bunch more people, like, something's got to give, right? And they've already said they're like proudly not having their employees crunch, which prompted the JB tweet of like maybe just like a little bit of workplace exploitation or something like that, like maybe just a little crunch. So they're not working more, they're not hiring more people, and they're doing the same content in less time. Might be less quality, who knows? Okay, either way they're doing it. But if like the people up top who are involved in making money, like the goblin rubbing their hands together with gold kind of shit, that you picture, if you're doing that for, you know, a couple, you get used to that for the whole World Soul Saga, it's going to stay like that. It's going to stay. I think the expansions are going to stay a year and a half instead of 2 years now because of money. So that is probably going to stay the same. As far as that, maybe they'll do another 3 expansion. We'll see how it ends up working out too, because I think like when they announced this, people got really excited. Do you remember how excited people got around the Emirdrasil release? It would like showed a major spike in players, and it was purely from BlizzCon announcing the World Soul Saga. So like people were clearly invested. We'll see how the whole Xalatath thing like turns out, but like if that ends up being like really hype, maybe they do it again. If not, I kind of don't know where they go from there. One thing I could definitely shoot down is I don't think there's going to be any WoW 2. In fact, maybe if you want to start talking about that, I think WoW 2 has already happened like multiple times. I think we're on like WoW 3 or 4 by now, but I don't know. They'll probably, my guess is like 5 years from now, they're probably still just like releasing WoW expansions every year and a half, and that's where we're at. That'd be my guess. Ain't no way they don't do a WoW 2 once the Riot MMO is out. Yeah, once the Riot MMO is out, yes. The thing famously that's been scratched a few times, probably from it was reset, I think, a year or 2 ago, meaning that they had gotten pretty far in the game, didn't quite get greenlit. And what Riot does, what game companies with a lot of time and resources do, is they're not going to release a game that they don't think is perfect. They create a take on the MMO genre. They have people come and test it. They try it out. And then if they feel like they're their trajectory is on the wrong pace, they'll literally reset the whole thing. Maybe keep a few things, reset the whole thing, start over, and see if the next time they come up with something that they actually want to green light and like create. And it was reset a few years ago, around 2 years ago, I think, if I remember. And I think something like a Riot MMO is going to take bare minimum 4 or 5 years from a reset point to ever be released, if it even gets greenlit. So like I wouldn't be holding your breath for that. Max, do we know when this season ends? We want to see some Race World last. Currently, I've had people in my chat make up multiple dates, but it seems like, and what I'm hoping for, is that Cutting Edge will end on NA on August 10th and on EU August 11th, and it's going to be right before the patch comes out and not the season, and then that way I can actually stream Race World last. But if that's not true, then I'm fucked. At least for stream content, but yeah. Pretty sure those dates were confirmed already. Yeah, that's great. If I could get like a link to them or something, that would be amazing. Max, did you see the YouTube short from the guy who designed Patchwork and Nax? He talks through his process for each ability. It's like 3 minutes and super interesting. All right, super interesting if you have classic nostalgia, or super interesting from like a boss design perspective in general. Because I have zero nostalgia for classics. It would have to purely be like off the design. Max, is there anything in prep that's going to be unexpected for race or just another tier? That's like just a normal tier. Now, when they first announced the season, they made a clarification post same day. But initially it looked like the mythic difficulty of the world boss was going to be available for 1 full week before the season came out. And that would have been a fucking movie. But they very quickly clarified that that is not going to happen. Will the Season 2 raid have Flex Mythic? So far, yes, on the Worldy B, right? It seems like they just... It basically looks like they put a Spore Walker Cho at the beginning of the season. Thoughts on if Euletech is going to be on par with Lura or not in terms of difficulty / hype? Could never. I have no idea. Hype, I have no idea because a lot of that doesn't even have to do with WoW or the raid. It's like a lot of factors. Difficulty. I mean, you're asking me to tell you how difficult I think the end boss is going to be from a raid we have not, or a boss we have not seen. You know. I mean, all I can say is WoW end bosses, barring Gallywix, you kind of know what to expect in terms of difficulty. Like, if you remove Gallywix, the last 4 end bosses have been what? Right? They've been Lura, one of the hardest, if not the hardest boss ever. Dimensius, one of the hardest, if not the hardest boss ever. Skip Gallywix, which was clearly like some no dungeon journal meme thing. What was the boss before that? Queen Ansarek, one of, if not the hardest boss ever. And then what was before that? Fyrak, one of, if not the hardest boss ever. So, like, I don't know. If you're a betting man, I would bet on this upcoming boss being one of, if not the hardest boss of all time. If you want to ask about difficulty, because that's just kind of what we're doing now. Max, are still Echo in radar? What does that mean? Language barrier. I'm assuming, are Echo still on your radar? No. Are you asking if like Echo's a guild we should still like? I mean, yeah, bro. Echo owns. A lot of people will look at the fact that we've won 4 raids in a row and they'll like be like it's in other sports. It's called like box score watching, you know. But like, bro, you could see 4 wins in a row. But I feel like if you think Echo's trash or something, you just have not watched the last 2 raids. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't it make sense to make the final bosses just insanely hard for viewership on the race? I mean, they clearly, regardless of viewership, you could argue it's for viewership or they just want to make content that's hard for all players. What Blizzard's trying to do right now is they try to make a difficult boss for everyone that ever fights it. Except for the first few bosses on Mythic. But specifically the last boss on Mythic, they want it to be extremely challenging for the best guilds in the world, but they also want it to be extremely challenging yet doable for the last guild that gets cutting edge, right? The problem they have is that the skill levels of those 2 things are 2 completely different universes, so they have to do a lot to the bosses to make that happen. They make them extremely, unbelievably broken hard initially, and then they have to nerf them a lot. They'll probably keep doing that. That just seems to be what they're doing. Wasn't there a new video of the Mythic Raid Leader you like to watch from time to time? You mean time to time, so like every time I stream now? Yeah, maybe. Big old bucket of water is the dude's name. He usually has some...
The Great Push.
Okay.
An event put on by Blizzard to be the spiritual successor to the Mythic Dungeon.
Yeah, this guy makes some content that's like pretty relatable for raid leaders. An honest conversation about Mythic Lura. Maybe that could help answer some of my questions on the boss's difficulty, although I'm not quite sure. Yeah, this was all. Let me.
Hey, what's up, guys? I've recorded this a few times, but I wanted to do a recap here. We have officially killed Laura, so if you guys have been watching my channel for a while,
Ooh,
you've probably
nerd
been
screams?
wondering, where are the videos? I posted a few times this week, but the videos haven't been coming because honestly, we've just been in the trenches. We've just been fighting this boss. It's been a long time coming. We progged it for 9 weeks. This is the 9th week that we killed it on, which sounds insane to people. It took us 522 pulls. And we ended up killing it. And a lot of people may be hearing that. Their first reaction is, holy fuck, you must be miserable. And actually, I'm really happy. I think I'm really happy with how we did. If you watched our last video, I talked about how I don't think that Mythic raiding was built for a 2-day guild. I think raiding 2-day on Lura really sucked for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons is that
I mean, I think if you're raiding 2 days a week, you're doing Mythic on Ultra Astro hard mode. You're doing it on crazy hard mode, especially if your 2 raid days a week are separated by more than a few days. Like, for example, if you raid, like, Wednesday, Sunday, bro, that is... I feel like that's, like, 30% harder than, like, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, or, like, 2 days in a row. I mean, like, if you're a 2-day raid guild and you do 2 days in a row, that is so much fucking easier than having a 4-day break in between, because you just... part of your first couple hours is like, what did we do on Wednesday, bro? It's been a whole week. Like, what's going on?
it's really hard to keep a consistent roster over a 9-period duration. We're not an insane guild, and thus expecting people to...
Hold on, let me see this. So it took them 250 pulls to CP3. It took them 140 pulls to CP2. And then even then, it's like, look at the look at those P1 wipes up here. That'll get you. That'll get you. And then look at the waves. It's like low pull, 2 hours later, low pull, 2 hours later, low pull. And then look at this. No P3 pulls for 30 attempts. Or no, that would be like, yeah, no P4 pulls for 30 attempts right here. Those are like the things, if you've rated before, when I look at like pull counter graphs, that's what I look at. I look at this like 30 attempts of despair.
Put in like an insane amount of effort. Feels like a big ask, right? Like we have to be realistic with where we're at and our expectations. And I think that like for a World Rank 1500 guild, I think it is realistic to expect that somebody is going to have work They're gonna have vacations scheduled. Now, I do think that like expectation
They're gonna
that they
have a
communicate these things
child?
effectively is important. But if somebody's gone or there's an emergency or something comes up, I don't think we can really hold it against them. We also had a lot of internet issues. That was a big thing. There's a lot of things that got in the way of our prog, and if you look at our like recent polls and you scroll through, you're gonna see like one of the main issues is that like we're just swapping people out every single night.
Yeah. Number one difficulty of progressing a boss over 9 weeks is the fact that there's almost no chance you're going to do it with the same 20 people, and that alone, I'm just going to make this up on an end boss. If you replace one person for another person, that is plus 30 pulls. That singular add. There's a chance it's like very little, and there's a chance it's more, but I'm just going to say it's like right around like just that simple act. At any point you do that, and obviously a lot of guilds have to do it multiple times, you're just like throwing away so
I think
many
that this is
pulls.
a cop out to say that that's the entire issue, right? But like, so this is like within the last 2 weeks, we had a Merc tank in who's super cool. I appreciate him for helping us out. And then we also had a rep paladin come in because somebody called out last minute. They had an emergency. They ended up coming back at one point, and we got our other tank back in eventually. But yeah, so we swapped them in. And then another night here again, different tank out. He had a work thing. And then right here,
Swapping
we
a
ended up
crystal
having
player out,
healers
plus 100
swap out
pulls.
at some point. So there's 3 raids where healers were out, different healers. So one of them was out 2 days, another one was out for 1 day. So we had a backup healer, and then our shaman right here, our resto shaman, one of them, he ended up being out for a week for work. And it's just like, yeah, over the course of this entire prog, you guys are getting the point. It's just like there's a lot of days where it's like somebody's out, we just don't have somebody in, and that sucks because on a boss like Lura, like there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of assignments that go in, and even switching something little can create a wipe. Like not a bunch of wipes. Just because we swap something doesn't mean that we're gonna wipe to it all night. But it's like, okay, we swap in a healer, we have healer CDs change, crystals don't get healed up, we end up wiping because of that once, right? Or okay, somebody swapped on kicks, maybe they didn't have their kick weak aura set up, or we didn't import the note correctly or something like that. We end up wiping because of that, and it's like, okay, cool, that's one wipe there. Like crystal carriers, somebody new is carrying a crystal one night, obviously that's a big responsibility. They end up wiping the raid. It's just expected, right? Like the moment you swap somebody, it is basically expected that you're going to wipe like at least once because of that new person.
Bro, it's got to be more
a
than
problem. Like I think that like that's just something that like again you've accepted it, but I do think that it sucks on this fight when you have to make.
I wish there was chapters.
Make all of these changes over the courses of 9 weeks. That really lengthens the prog. Now, like I said, I don't think that we can blame it all on roster issues. I think that that's a cop out. I think it's easy to say like, oh, we had roster issues, but every guild has roster issues. I don't think that there's a lot of guilds that they get to full prog the boss with every single same person the entire.
There are differences. One guild can have roster issues, the other guild can have roster issues. Both guilds had to replace 3 players, but one guild, 2 of the players they had to replace are seed carriers, and I think those 2 things are not the same.
Night, they don't deal with lag. They don't deal.
Or those
with
2 things are
emergencies,
healers
they're able to go
a tank.
Everyone's there every single day. I just don't think that's realistic. I think like the biggest issue that we had in this fight, weirdly enough, I don't think it was crystal carriers exclusively, right? I think crystal carriers wiped the raid. But I've read the discords. It seems like there's a lot of guilds that they don't have 6 players that they can count on to carry crystals. And I'm really proud of our prog because I didn't feel like that was the case. I felt like we had probably 12 players that could have carried crystal. I think most of the people in our raid would have been totally fine carrying crystal.
Interesting.
Which leads me to believe that I think a lot of our issues actually came down to mostly attention. I think our guild leader used the term attention economy at one point in
Oh
time.
my god, what a jump scare. Dude, seeing someone get hit by the beam while holding a seed is a jump scare.
And I don't know if that's necessarily the correct term, but like it sounded like a good buzzword for me. So this is a fight where if you are not paying attention for half a second, you can wipe the entire raid. And I think that makes it really hard. I don't think the glaives in themselves were that hard. I don't think the kicks in themselves were that hard. I don't think most of this fight like alone is that hard. It's just the idea that you have to do this 8.5 minute fight. You have to be dodging glaives the whole time in P1. If you are not paying attention, glaive comes through the boss, it kills you, you die, we have to use a battle res on you. That can create issues, especially when we started progging this boss. Remember, early on, if you had somebody dead in an intermission, it was basically an instant wipe. Because one person could end up getting 2 lines then, and if it was a crystal carrier, there's like 0% chance they don't hit their crystal. It was actually like really cursed.
Okay, I'm kind of over this. I get it. It's hard. All right, I kind of want to see
put on by Blizzard to be the spiritual successor to
wanna
the
see
Mythic
this.
Dungeon International. But instead of promoting speedrunning like the MDI does, the TGP tests players' ability to be
Wait, did this plague borer thing happen in the first TGP? Was this like TGP number 1?
able to push the highest level of dungeon. And it's a really cool format where the ability to do bleeding edge keystones is shown by the
That's
best teams
fucking
in the
beast
world.
mode, dude.
The TGP, though, it wasn't always around. It's an event that began in Shadowlands, and the formation of the TGP was something that heavily interested the top players of the game. The first TGP was marred by controversy, though, as one team, they decided to push the boundaries of what was allowed and what was not.
I mean, I know people got mad about it, and I know it, like, one of the worst things about Plague Borers is this entire situation led to the most annoying rule changes of all time, to where now we see no fun in these dungeons. You can't pull anything through walls, you can't do this. They have to be super strict on their rules, basically because this happened, and it's just less fun to watch, no snapping, shit like that. I truly believe that all stems from this situation. And that, but also I mean, they did ask for permission, you know? It's just like, I don't think they understood. Well, maybe they were a little devious with it, because I think, like, they were like, can we use misdirect? Can we use this misdirect bug? Yes, but, like, they use that to enable something far
So
crazier.
today we're going
I
to
don't
talk
know.
about the first great push and how Echo cheated, but won it all anyways. Now, let's get a little bit of backstory. So prior to the TGP, the top teams from Europe, China, and North America, they always battled it out on the live key leaderboard on Raider.io. But teams very rarely put in full effort to compete for the top spot. Live keys also have a significant limitation where it's not always possible to get the keystone you want. But what would happen if teams were
Lily
able to
doing good?
compete
Yeah.
versus one another
She's on
the
her
tournament
second
realm
dose of chemo
where the
right
playing
now.
field was truly even? This is the basic premise of the TGP, where even in a competition where the prize pool was a non-serious amount compared to the MDI standards at $20,000, the teams, they decided to make it serious. This competition would also result in one of the most popular WoW esports events of all time, peaking at 30,000 viewers on Twitch and 30,000 viewers on YouTube.
Is that
Now, this video's not
is that max viewership for a MDI? I feel like it's been higher than that. Maybe that is the most.
sponsored by anybody, but it's actually sponsored by you guys, the viewers. Thanks to the supporters over on my Patreon for helping make this video possible. They do get some cool perks like being able to watch this video a little bit early and being able to watch some of my other long form videos early. If you're interested in that, check out my Patreon down in the description. Now let's jump back into the TGP. So the first thing we need to actually establish are the rules of the TGP. The TGP was very different from the long-term WoW esports tournament, the MDI, like I said earlier. While the MDI promoted speedrunning and consistency, the Great Push promotes intense strategy innovation and the ability to push the previously thought impossible levels. And the rules were as follows. Teams would initially have a cross-region Proving Grounds phase where teams would play for 48 hours. The dungeon in questions for the Proving Grounds were Necrotic Wake and Spires of Ascension. Teams then would push the highest key they possibly could on the tournament realm during those 48 hours. After that, the top 6 teams for cumulative dungeon score regardless of the region would qualify to the finals. There were tiebreakers for teams who had the same dungeon score, where the first tiebreaker criteria was that teams who had the highest dungeon would have tiebreaker criteria in their favor. The second criteria was time. These rules actually set up for a very competitive Proving Ground, and something that was kind of interesting as well, the teams knew that Spires of Ascension and Necrotic Wake were not going to be dungeons in the finals, and this actually encouraged teams to stream their time trials, where we saw some absolutely insane stuff. I remember at this point in time watching Growl and Dorky, and somebody on their team discovered that they could actually snap a Marth out of the arena in Necrotic Wake, and it would just completely brick the boss, making it do 0 mechanics. Completely unrelated to this snapping dead.
See, that's the kind of shit that's awesome, you know? Like, I know Blizzard is like, oh, it makes our game look bad. But, like, dude, when you're, like, watching a live tournament and you see someone do some shit like that, you're like, yo,
The top
that was fucking sick.
Chinese team at the time, Skyline, was also able to time a Necrotic Wake on a 29, where most teams were only able to do 27 or 28. And at this point in time, this was completely unexpected.
Time
since
trials
China
doesn't
didn't really
matter.
have a
It could have
tendency to take
happened at
WoW
any point,
esports
right? It's just
too
tech. Cool
seriously.
tech.
And just as a region, China
That is
has
brought
always
out
cared
at
a
any
lot
point is
about
sick.
pushing the highest keystone levels, but you know, they were never really showcasing the immense amount of talent that they had on the MDI stage. Would this be a format that actually favors them was kind of a question that was looming on everybody's mind. Regardless of this, one thing about time trials is that there normally aren't any rules. During broadcast days, teams have to follow some very strict rules, but on the tournament realm, as long as you aren't hacking the game pretty much or getting yourself banned, pretty much anything goes, including, like you saw on screen there, breaking a
Not
Marth, like we
anymore.
saw from Does the Bear stream. But those were just the Proving Grounds. And out of the Proving Grounds, we ended up getting our top 6 teams that would qualify for the finals. And those were Skyline.
Dude, the one thing that was always weird for me in time trials is Blizzard would tell you, like, don't do certain things. Like, one thing you could do is you could, for your time trial run, you could zone in on a Warlock even though you weren't playing one, and you could give everyone Warlock Healthstones. And, like, you could do your run with Healthstones when you don't have a Warlock, which is, like, fucking good. Like, that is definitely good. And they were like, yeah, just don't do that. And then we didn't do it, and we were like, dude, if we did that, they would have no way to know. Like, they're not around at all hours of the day to see what you're doing in your dungeon runs. They just look at the end result, right? I'm pretty sure you could have, like, done some sketchy shit in time trials, like, all of these years and just straight up get away with it. And I don't think if they found out, they would even do
Echo,
anything.
Sheesh, Ambition, Does the Bear Stream, and Yep. So we talked about the qualifiers, but the rules for the finals, like I said earlier, were a little bit different than the rules that were set for time trials. So unlike the unlimited attempts over 48 hours that the teams had during time trials, the timing was far more condensed for broadcast days. Teams instead would need to play out the remaining 6 dungeons over 3 5-hour days.
Yeah, we
In
know
the
how this
dungeons,
works.
they would
Get to
start
the
with
good shit.
Overall time period. There was another fringe rule that involved tiebreakers between teams that had not really. And the teams, they discovered the dungeon affixes at the exact same time as the audience, meaning the routes for specific affixes like, let's say, tyrannical, bolstering, or inspiring were going to change the texture of the dungeons dramatically. And for those who haven't played with these affixes, just as a bit of a refresher, tyrannical is increased boss HP and damage, which creates weird time retention and one-shot checks. Bolstering, it requires you to kill an entire trash pack at the same time, else you increase the mob's HP and damage dealt to you. And Inspiring created an aura around the Inspiring mob that didn't allow you to CC or kick the surrounding mobs. All of this is to say that these would drastically change the pull cadence and pathing, on top of having the seasonal affix Prideful, who spawned every 25%, and that was a raid boss in its own right. It was this whole thing. All you need to know is that this means that teams have to calculate multiple potential routes per dungeon prior to going into the weekend. And teams have never played this format before, so the meta strategy for this TGP is relatively unknown. At the same time, teams largely did similar strategies, funnily enough. Some teams chose to go wide and do 4 dungeons on a plus 25, where some teams chose to go tall and do multiple dungeons on the much harder plus 26 Keystone level. But ultimately, the way that the strategy was the same, though, was that during day 1, the other side and Plaguefall were kind of off the table. And the tournament realm was shut down overnight, so teams could not practice. So any tactical advantage given to the competition was a huge deal. This means that dungeons like Theater of Pain or Mists of Tyranid Scythe or whatever that had a relatively known route and dungeon cap would be the preferred dungeons to go first. And at the time, we really didn't know what was in store for The Other Side or Plaguefall, but what the audience could tell at this point
I
in time
also
was that
call
the
it The
competition
Other Side.
did not want to give any advantage to their competitors. So they'd save their routes, their tech, their potentially unique specialization picks or class picks or whatever for later on in the weekend to catch people off guard. And all of this resulted in Does the Bear Stream ending day 1 in first place with 100 points, a 4-way tie at 76 points for most of the teams, and then Yep, they were in last at 75 points. And everybody was kind of gearing up for an exceptional day 2 of action.
Dorky says EU fans got really mad at this video. Well, yeah, I mean, if anything else, wouldn't it just be the thumbnail? Isn't it just a thumbnail gap? Like, if I'm going to duplicate this and go to Tettle's YouTube thing, remember how everyone got mad at Preach for saying he wasn't going to, that WoW is over and he's never going to play WoW again, and it was purely based off his thumbnail because he never said that at all? The reason why EU people were mad at this is because the thumbnail has an Echo logo and it just says cheaters. That's why they're mad. They're Echo fans and they don't believe that, so they're just mad. It's literally as simple as that.
Where they would go and look at their routes, look at the affixes, and potentially
If you
reroute
choose
the
a
dungeons
clickbait
overnight.
title,
And I'm also just going to quickly
you can't blame the people for taking that as what you said in the video.
Summarize day 2. Sheesh, they had a very impressive strategy.
That's how
in
that
The Other
works.
Side,
It's a kiss
based
curse.
around having a rogue for Shroud while also having an elemental shaman. This allowed them to get a +1 over the rest of the competition in The Other Side. Echo also had a +1 over the rest of the competition in Halls of Atonement on a 27. Now, the other side seemed far less reproducible for the other TGP teams compared to the 27 HOA. That seemed quite likely that other teams would be able to do. But regardless, by the end of day 2, the tournament is shaping up to be a hotly contested final day. And at this point, only Ambition had stepped foot into Plaguefall on a 24, but pretty much everybody knows that Plaguefall Sunday is going to be the pivotal dungeon since it should be done at the highest level. And now all of this backstory has led us to the final day. Plaguefall Sunday. Let's talk a little bit about why Plaguefall is so
Dude,
impactful.
by the way, being around for this was like this is one of the days in like high level WoW history where like it didn't like I don't know how much this broke containment into like WoW normies. Like what did recently was like the WoW GM thing. That was a high end WoW thing that broke containment. This didn't really break containment, but it was just like if you were a high level WoW player, this was just like a day you remember. Like just seeing this progress throughout the day was just a fucking movie.
Plaguefall is a dungeon that theoretically can be pushed far higher than the rest. This is due to a couple of key mobs in the dungeon that do insane amounts of friendly fire damage to their allies. Mob number 1 in question, the Wretched Plague Boars. These guys are littered sporadically inside of trash packs in the dungeon. Basically, whenever they hit 30% HP, they would cast an ability called Plague Bomb.
Echo fans
blow
were
up,
begging
and
him in his Twitch chat to do a vid on the fired up Kaiveza Arcane. That is literally nothing like this, by the
put
way.
a massive dot on trash mobs or bosses. The dot actually scaled with Keystone level.
Just
and
pure
the Wretched
rage.
Plague Boars, these were mobs that were bugged
That is
for a little
beast mode.
while, where Echo showcased a strategy that involves cycloning and mind controlling them to not let them self-destruct, but still get the dot on the trash mobs. Whenever Echo showcased this, they showcased this on the tournament realm 7 days before the tournament started, and Blizzard slammed down a hotfix pretty quickly after Echo put up a plus 30?
Wait, Cyclone is supposed to prevent all actions while making the problem is that Plague Bomb isn't channeled, and once its effects continue. Okay, so they already, I didn't know this, they already tried to remove the Plague Borer shit.
Gingy uploaded this to YouTube, as you can see on screen right here, but the mobs got changed. That's all you need to know. And these mobs now work as intended, kind of. And their damage can no longer be exploited beyond the limited nature in which they exist. Now, the second mob in question is the Fungalmancer. Fungalmancers have a debuff on them that can be spell stealed by Mage. The ability in question is actually called Wonder Grow, and it's a stacking 15% damage amp. This would allow Mage to do insane amounts of DPS through the dungeon if min-maxed, and you would see teams like Ambition and Skyline pretty much carrying this mob around throughout the entirety of the dungeon, even snapping it into the last boss area, and just taking this mob places where nobody thought it could go. So those are the first 2 mobs, and there was actually 2 types of Plague Boars. And this is where we get into mob 3 in question, Rigged Plague Boars. There was one type which I cited earlier that was just in the trash packs, but the rigged Plague Boars were the ones that caused all the problems and inspired this video. So there was a mini-boss called Viralax Blightweaver who spawned infinite amounts of these rigged Plague Boars. She would summon 2 of these, let's say every 20 seconds or so, and these Plague Boars were typically used to kill off some map-specific trash packs. And the reason for this is fairly simple. They actually killed themselves. And you can see on screen here in this VOD from JPC that these Plague Boars, unlike the ones that you saw earlier, have a timer attached to them. When the timer expires, they blow up and they basically solo whatever trash pack you were fighting at the time whenever they're inside the green swirlies. And they'll also do damage to bosses, funnily enough. So both of these types of Plague Boars and Fungalmancers actually require insane amounts of finesse in order to be able to get 100% of the value out of them. But if you did, you could actually push unmatched levels inside of Plaguefall. However, as it turns out, there was a little bit more tech to the rigged Plague Boars than initially
show the misdirect.
believed. And with that being the case, let's cut to 2021 me so you guys can hear the explanation for the strategy.
Dude, stuff like this is so fun. It's so innovative. Like, how the fuck do you think about this stuff? Yeah, dude, that's where I'm at. I'm a fan of all tech. In fact, it's going to be kind of a hot take. I'm leaning towards saying that, like, this was, like, they kind of did, I don't know, the right thing, but, like, you kind of do whatever's in your power to do. They won the tournament. They didn't get punished for it. And that means you kind of did the right thing, where if you got banned, then you would have fucked up, you know? Like, I'm not going to be, like, super anti-Echo here, I don't think. But if I was on another team, I definitely would be.
That we're going to be talking about today.
Mr. Zyro, Mr. Doa, I have some insider information about what is actually happening with the Plague Boars. So, newly released, there is a bug with misdirection. They're not, the Plague Boars aren't global combating people, it's MD.
Oh. Huh.
Oh.
Interesting.
Oh.
Apparently, if you let misdirection expire inside of a dungeon, you have permanent MD.
What? Really?
Is it a tournament? Is it a tournament realm thing, or is that a
It's probably a live thing.
in
It's probably,
live?
probably just a dungeon thing, man.
Huh.
Huh.
Wow.
Now, I kind of misexplained this in the video. It
Wow.
wasn't only if
That sounds like an if you tried to create an AI video and you told it to make people sound surprised, that's what they would do. They literally sound like AI people.
misdirection
Huh? Ooh, wow.
expired, like I said, but it was also if you canceled the misdirection buff off your character. And Echo, they figured out this bug with misdirection a few days earlier, and you can see Fragnance doing this on screen here from his POV. For those people who don't know, snapping is actually a core mechanic in World of Warcraft, and it's Blizzard's way of telling you that mobs have no path available to you. They can't reach you for whatever reason. But depending on the mob type, it will either immediately teleport to you or immediately teleport you to them, but the rigged Plague Boars very notably teleported to you, to make sure that the mobs don't do weird stuff inside the game, just to make sure that they always have a path.
It's just so insane to watch.
And snapping, it's a really commonly used strategy. I mean, we've seen it in many dungeons over and over again. But with this commonly used strategy and these incredibly overpowered Plague Boars, infinite misdirection, Echo got to work inside the dungeon. And Fragnance on his Hunter would run to the mini-boss and proceed to snap Plague Boars for nearly the entire 30-minute dungeon run. And not only was Fragnance AFK snapping mobs over and over again, but Echo ended up running 2 tanks in order to allow for threat to be more consistent. And Echo, strategy-wise, was 100% all in on Plague Boars soloing their dungeon for them. And how did this fare? Well, no other team in real time could figure out how in the world Echo was snapping the Plague Boars. The initial theory was something related to global combat and healing threat, where feigned death was somehow to blame, but it seemed like nobody could really figure out the actual strategy. Does the bear stream even enter Plaguefall with the Hunter at some point to try to figure out what in the world was going on with snapping? But nobody really could figure it out. And with the snapping strategy, Echo handily won the TGP at 157 points, where the second place teams were all at 156. All right,
where comes the
Echo ended up having a +1 in Plaguefall on the level 28, and securing that for Echo basically locked up their victory. That victory is very unlikely if we didn't have what happened to the Plague Boars happen in their run. Now, the reality of this Plague Boar strategy was explained on stream by me a little bit over halfway into the day. So this means that everybody figured out what was going on at some point. The jig was kind of up from Echo's perspective. How was this a legal tactic? A lot of people were questioning. Using infinite misdirection, even for the most hardcore players, that seems a little bit sketchy in regards to strategies. Blizzard also tends to police their tournaments a bit more than, say, we saw during time trials. Now, this has a question as to why the admins did not disqualify Echo during the tournament.
Back then, though, not really. Like, okay, I mean, like, time trials are the fucking Wild West, but, like, I feel like if you're watching this now and you weren't around then, you might be like, oh yeah, they're super strict in tournaments. They did not used to be super strict relative to now. It definitely ramped crazy style.
Okay. So we're looking at all of this in hindsight, and there's kind of a problem in the rule set where there is a little bit of gray area for what needs to be.
All I'm saying is if your method requires a hot fix immediately, it should be considered illegal. Maybe, but like also as a competitor, I can kind of be on the side of like if you were the person to come up with something earlier than other people, that's something you should, you know, be able to benefit from. And if it's available to everyone, you as a competitor can't be like, oh, well, those other people are just like, you know, like there's blatant cheating, and then there's like, unfortunately, Blizzard has left this huge gray area, which anytime anything exploit related breaks containment, you see everyone calling for everyone's heads because they're like, it's in the TOS, you don't exploit. But the reality is, if you've been playing the game for a while at a high level, you know that there's a lot of reasons why you would do something that is on the line of sketchy, and it's because Blizzard is very inconsistent with their actioning of those things, with how soon they fix them, and most of the time the answer is you should have done it because they didn't end up rolling back whatever you got for it, and you were kind of just behind if you didn't do it. So if things are like that for a long enough time, you learn. You have to make a judgment call based on how extreme it is, but you learn, and everyone has done this at this level, that like sometimes you do something risky and it either pays off or it doesn't, but Blizzard has given you a reason to make that decision, because it'd be a lot easier actually if Blizzard was not a huge gray area, it was very black and white, and if you ever did anything like that, they banned you, because if you did that, people just wouldn't fucking do it, but they don't, and sometimes they let you do it, so you always are leaving that up to the player as to whether you should do it or not.
Done here. The rules are ultimately supposed to allow for Blizzard to make judgment calls, and in this era, teams tended to ask admins for strategy clarification if they thought that there would be anything towing the line in regards to allowed versus not. And I've dug up the rule set from 2021, so we can actually look at the rules as written, because I think that's kind of important to...
It is kind of funny in hindsight, though, that, like, they ended up winning this tournament by doing something this egregious, yet like Dorky used an infinite direction, what did he do? Sorry, he used shocking disclosure pot and got fucked. And then in this most recent tournament, a player had a necklace with identical stats to another necklace that Blizzard put on the PTR vendor, but said, like, don't pick this neck. The guy picked it because it looks identical to the other one, and then they did a dungeon, and this guy had 0 more power than anyone else who had the other neck on, but because it had different text on the top, and he technically wasn't supposed to use it, for, again, just because they put it on there on accident, and again, very important, was not any better than the other item. It was literally identical. They, like, removed the map. It's like, I mean, Blizzard does a lot of dumb shit, but, like, the fact that they got away with this and those teams didn't get away with that is crazy.
Context for what happened here. So Rule 6.2 has a provision for cheating. Letter E states that any use or attempted use by a player of any bugs or exploits in the game may result in a forfeit of the match and disqualification from the tournament. Blizzard, at its discretion, will determine bugs and exploits. Now, the first thing with letter E...
Players must compete to the best. Any form of cheating will not be tolerated. Again, but that's, like, you define it, right? All players are prohibited from influencing or manipulating a tournament game, a match. The outcome is determined by anything other than its merits. Yeah, don't throw the game. The I by power rule. Players may be required to install software on their computers for the duration of the tournament, which is specifically designed to detect cheating. Examples of cheating would include, but are not limited to, any intentional or attempted use by a player of any bugs or exploits in the game. Again, so this is just to protect them. It's the same thing in the TOS that's like, don't exploit, even though you can exploit and not get banned. And the TOS also says we can ban you for any reason at any time. It's just to protect them, basically. And for them to always have something to point to if they want to action you, they can at least point to the rules. So these are very broad and all-encompassing, but they are not always enforced, again, which creates the gray area. I feel like a lot of people will look at this and be like, there's no gray area, and you just simply don't know. There absolutely is, right? Especially back then.
Just blatantly exploit bugs all the time. Snapping by itself could be described as a bug, but snapping is done by basically every team in a bunch of different...
Yeah, no. Snapping, if they wanted to ban you for snapping something that they didn't like, they could use this as an example of, like, using a bug or an exploit 100%. They just don't because it was just, like, widely used enough.
Dungeons.
They don't allow it now, so obviously they don't want it to happen, and they should, by the way. Snapping's very fun. But
using invisibility potions to skip the pridefuls
just to protect them
as a bug. Hell, we even saw Does the Bear stream abusing a bug in time trials to qualify for the TGP. That's not really the relevant part of this rule that we're going to be discussing today. The last line of this rule is actually the most important part, where Blizzard determines bugs and exploits is really the key to what happens. The communication to the players normally in this era said that there was a strategy that was common on live. You probably shouldn't worry about it because it was going to be allowed to be used on the tournament realm. Blizzard was really trying hard.
This is no longer true, by the way. On live, it's pretty normal to pull things through walls and stuff like that if you can, and on tournament realm, you can't.
To not stunt creativity, and this was the first time that the rules were really tested by Echo, because nobody had been so blatant to try to push the line for what would be allowed and what wouldn't be allowed. From a Mythic Plus perspective, abusing class bugs and something kind of unrelated to the dungeon to completely trivialize a dungeon tends to be seen as over the line. Whereas as hardcore Mythic Plus players, it's this unsaid balance of, what is the bug involved? Is it something inside the dungeon or something related to a class or something potentially outside the dungeon? And how...
Yeah, it's funny. He's going through all these things now. And you have to, because there is no clear line in the sand. You have to do all this mumbo-jumbo of, like, a bunch of different factors just to decide whether you think this is allowed or not. And it's just, you're making it up because Blizzard has put themselves in that decision.
How much time does it save you? But there was a silver bullet in Echo's favor. Kind of. So Echo actually went through and asked admins whether or not the strategy would be permitted. And they said yes. Case closed, right? Wrong. Now, this didn't come out until after the fact, but Echo...
I mean, it is kind of case closed.
...by omission whenever they asked the admins about the strategy. They plainly asked, is snapping plague borers allowed? Which the admin's response was, sure, you're allowed to.
Yeah, they didn't ask if you could use the infinite misdirection bug.
To do that. But clearly the issue with this isn't the problem of snapping plague borers. It was the using of infinite misdirection, a bug that shouldn't have been in the game. And you, the viewer, you understand that the day finalizes and Echo wins, and Blizzard is in an absolute pickle trying to figure out what to do. And the high-end community is kind of split. You have people like Max, Stratnos, and JB who basically state that this is an unfortunate end to an overall very great tournament. They wish the rules were more clear, but Echo is just the smartest team.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think he was about to misrepresent what I said. But yeah, unfortunate way to end the tournament. whatever it should be, but also like they came up with it and you didn't. So W. Yeah, that's what I felt then, and that's how I felt now. What do you mean, damn caught in 4K? I thought I was about to get caught in 4K, but that just supports what I said now.
People like Max, Stratnos, and JB, who basically state that this is an unfortunate end to an overall very great tournament. They wish the rules were more clear, but Echo is just the smartest team.
Yeah, exactly.
JB took a pretty bold stance and tweeted, "There are no exploits in Mythic Plus, only shit that you're mad you didn't think of."
Facts.
On the other hand, there were a ton of fans and competitors alike who thought that this was straight up cheating. And there was also an angry mob of people who didn't even watch the TGP, they just read the Wowhead.
Dude, yeah, those are, by the way, I think those are my least favorite people. The people who didn't, in this scenario, didn't watch the TGP, reacted to the Wowhead title, are not really like familiar with like the high-end WoW scene and are just like out for blood because they heard the word exploit. Those people are just like so lost. You saw them recently with the GM stuff, but like they're so lost and they just are just an angry mob that wants blood and unwilling to reason with anyone.
Idle and got mad on behalf of, I'm not really sure, nobody maybe? But even to this day, the Chinese region still thinks that Skyline got absolutely scammed out of a win. I also remember that Ellesmere was quite mad about this series of events too.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, if you are a player on another team in this event, I mean, I can tell you right now, if I'm a player on another team in this event, I would have felt all kinds of ways about this. But I was a spectator. But like, if you're another team, you would feel way weird.
And the ultimate problem was that what was deemed to be a disqualifying level of bug or exploit was never really established. All right, so what do you remember about the Plague Boar incident?
The Plague Boar incident? God, what was that, 5 years ago? I remember everything because it was kind of insane at the time. We knew that they were going to pull out some crazy shit, but we didn't think it was going to be that crazy. We also didn't know what they were doing until basically after the tournament. That was also, I think, the same tournament as the $30,000 feather, which is a whole separate thing.
What? What the fuck is he talking about? What is the $30,000 feather?
Where in Sanguine Depths, there was a bug that happened to us where I taunted a feather, and during every single attempt in practice, when you taunted that feather, the feather would walk towards you when it stopped casting, and then you use that feather to reset the lantern stacks, and I taunted it and it just stood there and didn't do anything, and then it died outside of the lantern stacks.
Yeah, that do be how that happens. Whenever you're in competition, you can expect that something that has never happened in any practice will just randomly happen, and it is the most tilting thing of all time.
And so that's how we lost Sanguine Depths. So that I was already salty from that, and then we found out about the Plague Boars. And I remember being pretty tilted at the time because, like, obviously in the moment you're like, you know, highly competitive and like you're pissed off because it feels cheap. But then also, like, with a little bit of perspective, you realize that that's just how the game works. That's how competitive play works.
Do you think that players would view the Plague Boar incident differently today? Because I think that at the time there was a lot of people that actually were in support of Echo for what they were doing.
I think probably, but that's also partially because of a shift from Blizzard, right? Because Blizzard has shifted more towards strict rules during tournaments. You know, you had the whole disqualified from using fucking shocking disclosure.
Yep.
So
Shout out
that's
Dorky.
a good example of like how aggressive Blizzard has shifted their stance from previously being like, whatever, you know, if it's in the game, it's in the game. And like, we're the most extreme things we might act on. But in general, exploiting was much more common. And I think that that's been cracked down on by Blizzard in a multitude of ways, both in the actual game, in terms of like, you know, banning players more aggressively for pure exploiting. You know, we saw at the start of the War Within when a bunch of Method, I think, got banned, or Echo, or I don't remember. Some guild got banned a bunch for like some farm rep shit.
Oh, that was both. That was both of them, actually.
Oh, that was both? Okay.
Well, we got... Oh, which one are they talking? We got in trouble for Seeds, and they got in trouble for the beginning of War Within, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember someone got banned for it, and people were a little surprised because Blizzard hadn't really acted on that. I think that a lot of this crackdown on stuff kind of started from that Plague Boar incident, and because that definitely brought to light a lot of problems. There was a lot of drama around it, and like, I think that Blizzard has shifted its stance more since then to be progressively more and more like anti-exploiting, and so I think now it would be viewed significantly differently. It would definitely be considered like just pure exploiting, and people would be pissed. But I think back then it was different because of how Blizzard had previously treated exploiting.
And my personal
very true
opinion in hindsight is that Echo cheated. I think the lying by omission is kind of the end of the conversation, and I think that Blizzard should have immediately stopped their runs halfway through the final day and disqualified all of the previous runs. The problem is the longer that Blizzard allows the day to run, the harder it actually...
Okay, so that's why the EU fans are mad. His end goal is I think they cheated. Yeah, I think there's... I'm not there. I think there's a... I've just been in a position too many times where Blizzard doesn't give you an easy decision to make, and I can see them, or maybe I just have empathy for them or whatever, but I think a lot of people that haven't competed in these things, not saying that's necessarily true of Tettles, they're just like, it's a good versus bad thing. You don't steal from a gas station, right? You know what's right and wrong. Same thing in WoW exploiting. Not fucking true, man. Like, Blizzard has made it extremely difficult to determine when is the correct time to exploit and when isn't. And I know if you're unaware, that just sounds ridiculous, but it's just absolutely the way it is. And I don't know. It's hard to fault some, especially back then. It was so much less clear back then than it is now, especially in these tournaments. I don't know if that's true. I mean, yeah, I guess they asked if this thing was okay. Can you snap Plague Boars? Yes, but the issue is the infinite misdirect bug. But you could just argue it's like, oh, okay, well, people use this on live, and it's a known thing, and there's a lot of arguments for that.
Is to walk back without serious consequences on the tournament itself. Now, I don't know this to be true, but I would actually not be shocked if Echo actually went through and explained the bug correctly from the beginning. Blizzard probably wouldn't have allowed it, but at the same time, there were kind of two problems. One, the rules were not written too clearly, but I don't think that really matters here. I think that Blizzard probably could have disqualified them anyways. But the second issue is that the tournament was allowed to continue while Echo was performing the strategy live on broadcast.
Yeah, that part is crazy. Also, I'm just trying to think of like what would have happened if like Echo got like disqualified for using it. Because like the reason why I don't think Blizzard could disqualify them is because they technically asked and they were told yes. Like, yes, they omitted the infinite misdirection bug, but the fact that they got a yes in general, I feel like Blizzard just felt like they couldn't ban them, which was really like smart on their end, like Echo's end, like putting them in that position.
And if you're
if they got banned, oh my god. Because this was back with, like, peak EU Echo fanboy. Like, they were as rabid as they've ever been back then. They would have gone fucking nuts if they got disqualified.
And
I honestly wish I was around to see that.
You let Echo do the strategy, you're basically stating that it's okay. It's kind of like the old saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission, and Echo kind of hoped that asking for forgiveness would work out. And it did. I do remember at the time I was really torn. I even pulled up like an old Titanforge podcast episode to try to see what I was even thinking at that point in time. Because after the tournament concluded, and once the results are posted, it's nearly impossible to reverse the result. But something didn't sit right with me with how Echo actually achieved the win. And I think it's really just an unfortunate situation all around. I even found an interview with Healingstat after the fact. He's the leader of the esports team, and he basically said that Echo's win was a point of controversy, which Blizzard was not super happy with. And in the future, tactics which would be deemed controversial would needed to have a VOD provided for review beforehand. And this Plague Boar incident, it started the first movement.
Yeah, dude, that's what I blame Echo for the most. Is not like doing the thing or winning the tournament. I think I'm on the Echo side of that. It's how fucking boring MDIs and TGPs have been since then because Blizzard cracked down the rules. No pulling things from behind walls. No snapping. No cool tech. Like, bro, like MDI should be all like leashes off. You should be able to do any crazy fucking cool shit you can come up with. That would be the most fun.
into rewriting the rules for both the MDI and the TGP. Rules that now require teams to float all potentially controversial strategies by admins prior to using them during that weekend. Echo used 100% of Blizzard's grace and goodwill for this one tournament, and in the process, they used a strategy that was very controversial, and people are still mad about it to this day. But
really? I feel like it's a long time ago. I feel like no one actually thought about this. Like, literally not one human thought about this until this video was made.
But that's how Echo cheated in
Honestly.
the TGP and ended up winning anyways.
Yeah, dude. Okay, what are the EU fans saying here? Bro knew exactly what he was doing for engagement with that thumbnail a couple weeks before the race. Facts. Dude, the thumbnail is crazy, bro. Literally Echo logo, giant in red cheaters. Like, that is like, you are just stoking the fire of all of those people. That's just like the thing that's going to get them riled up so much. Holy fuck. Live keys. Old exploit early, exploit often, never gets old. Yeah, because it's usually the right thing to do. However, even Blizzard has, like, made a lot of us not do that anymore in the race. They have definitely toned that down. Like, when we did the Amir Jasil Dream Seed rep, we were unable to do something that other guilds were able to do based on, like, the time things were released and found out. So all we did when we exploited rep there was to just catch up to the rep that everyone else already had that we should have had as well. And then it was a punitive thing. Like, they removed it from us. We had less eye level that race than they did because of it. And then going into the next expansion, Echo, we were like, okay, well, we just got punished, so we're not going to do any rep things. And then Echo and Method did. Echo and Method, like, did the rep thing, and they got banned. And I think they wouldn't have gotten banned if we hadn't previously done the Amir Jasil thing. I think if you're Blizzard, you're like, dude, what are you guys doing? We literally just punished one of you guys for exploiting rep last season, and you guys are doing it again? All right, well, we're going to make the punishment more severe so you guys actually get to stop fucking doing this shit. And I think that was effective. As a person making these decisions in a guild, if someone is ever like, hey, I can do something sketchy to gain rep, the answer is fucking no, man. Like, before it was like, well, let's think about this, because that's what Blizzard made you do. But now Blizzard is more clear with the rules, and it's like the answer is absolutely not. We should never, ever, 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 ever do that. And I imagine that's what the other guilds would think too, because they've now been punished as well, and more severely than we were, because they did it after we did it. Bro, how is rep abuse a thing every single season? Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter now, because I think Blizzard doesn't really put a lot of power in reps anymore. Maybe that's why. I don't know. So they don't have to think about that every season. I don't know. When was the last time you leveled a character? This expansion? Leveled 2 of them? It was I actually somewhat enjoyed leveling this expansion. Pretty fun. Wait, does it say lied on the thumbnail too? Yeah, a post-it note like it's a investigation. They lied? Didn't you literally get boosted on stream? Did I? I leveled last expansion, yes. Last expansion in I remember getting boosted a lot in Dragonflight. I don't remember the War Within boost, but probably. But no, I leveled Bone Floppy and Rizzy Glizzy Natty. I wish I got boosted on one of those, I guess. Max followed the arrow very poorly, but Natty. Yeah, it's one of those things where you're streamering? You're being a streamer, and you're questing as a side thing. So you're entertaining your chat primarily with your brain, and then outside of that, you're following the arrow in your peripheral vision. So if unfortunately any chatter were to watch the stream instead of just listen to it, they would just be watching you quest at just like very questionable questing. Just like, why did you have gone in circles around the thing you need to loot 4 times? Do you just sit around and LARP for 3 months and then lock in for 1 month and the race starts? Yeah, pretty much with WoW, yeah. Play a lot of other games. Speaking of that, GG's. I'm going to go blow up. Dude, why is this, like, off? Oh, I probably need to download an update. I need to get the Ellesmere UI update package. I have yet to swap. My goal is to be the last person on Earth to swap to it, which is coming soon because everyone else has.